Hi. Today's video is very personal for me. All of my videos are personal, but this is something that I'm currently living through right now. A lot of my other videos are things where I'm reflecting back on life and what I've done in situations. Today's video is something that I'm dealing with now. Very personal. So, I mentioned in another video that I am in a therapy program for trauma survivors that I had to do like a screening for to get assigned a caseworker and a therapist. So, I did my intake, and I know I made a video about an eating disorder in regards to some self reflection during my intake sessions. And I had so my intakes took about 4 visits for my intake sessions. And looking back on it now, I can see why I was given a diagnosis so soon, because with this center, they are working with trauma survivors, so they're very particular on how they do their screening to get the proper treatment for the right people. And yeah, I guess their screening process takes 4 visits as opposed to the typical going into a therapist's office and it's an hour and a half for your first visit, and then every other visit's an hour. So she told me that she wanted to do treatment for me based on borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder, I had no problem with her mentioning that, because yeah, I understood that. I understand what PTSD is. But to hear borderline personality disorder was a shock. I was like, what? Like, does that mean I'm bipolar? Like, what? I don't even know what's going on. Of course, being uneducated, and I'm not even claiming to be super educated about the situation at the moment, I'm being very easy with myself and educating myself in doses. But yeah, it was hard. So that was on December 30th. So it was 2 weeks ago, about. The reason why I wanted to make this video right now is because I'm already in a better place than I was on December 30th and December 31st and January 1st. So for the first couple days, it was very hard for me to gauge myself. I've already seen my growth from then till now, which is why I'm like, all right, before I actually can be a relatable feeling for someone, before I phase out of that, I wanted to make sure that I was still kind of making this video while I was in that feeling. And there were a couple things that I wrote down. I have a little billboard behind the phone. Okay, so borderline personality disorder, I put, it's caused by suffering through childhood prolonged abuse or trauma. It creates this alternate persona, because this persona that you're creating has to carry you through the traumatic event that you're presented with as a child. You know, when we're children, we have to learn from behaviors around us, what's taught to us. So if you're a neglected child, if you're an abused child, it's very distorted, and you can't form the proper mind stimulation that a kid that is not in an abusive situation would. Sorry. And then I also put, there's no resting period. So, you know, a lot of things can happen with trauma. You can have a very traumatic event happen, and you're experiencing this trauma, and then the event stops. Or the person leaves, or, you know, whatever the traumatic event is, there's a separation out of that. When you're a neglected child and an abused child, you may have episodes that will happen, and, you know, you'll be able to rest from them, but you still create like this underlying non-restable period of toxicity, and that's not healthy for a child in a developmental age. A couple things I wrote down about how I felt in that moment. I was sad. I was very sad. I just cried. And thankfully I had a few people that I am comfortable enough with opening up to how I feel. And I was very thankful for that, because while I was kind of vocalizing how I felt to these people, I was figuring out a lot about myself in just expression. So it is very important to communicate through things like this, because you will realize things. I felt very uneducated, which caused a little wave of self-doubt, self-judgment. I felt like I was losing my strength because I didn't really understand what this meant and how this correlates with who I think I am, you know. And I felt like this was going to be weaponized against me, coming from a narcissistic family and ex-spouse who I have children with. Things are weaponized against me still. So immediately I was just very emotional about that. I was already putting myself through the pain of this imagined cluster of fear things that I just wrote. I have it on this side of the thing, so if you see me kind of like pointing at it, you know, and then over here's positive. Don't worry, I'm getting there. So, you know, I had a cluster of a lot of negative emotions that came over me. And then I started feeling mad. I was very mad. And I'm not going to say I was mad at myself. I was mad at, like, my mom. I was mad at my brothers. I was mad at, you know, anybody I could think of that had any involvement with any traumatic events that occurred with me as a child. Another thing I wrote down was my therapist had said to me, you know, a lot of traits of these people who have borderline personality because of childhood traumatic events. Another thing I want to mention is borderline personality disorder is not bipolar personality disorder. They are different. A lot of people do get them confused. Borderline personality disorder has a lot of variables that underlie in someone getting that diagnosis. I feel as though the underlying effect of me getting this diagnosis is the prolonged childhood abuse and trauma. Okay, so she asked me, are you adaptable? Are you resilient? And I remember that was like a word that people always would use for me as a child. It's like, you're so resilient. And I never really understood what it meant until I got older. Are you relatable to any situation? And I was always told, you know, you're a very relatable person. So I was like, yeah. And she says, are you largely empathetic? I'm like, absolutely. And the way she kind of phrased it to me was like, when you are very adaptable, you're very compassionate, you have empathy for people, you want to share, you want to help, you're so far on like this positive side. And then your traumatic events in life bring such a polarity. I'm trying to get like really far, right? So like there's all these traumatic events, and these are all your positive aspects. People with borderline personality disorder, since they've had so many extremes, they don't see the gray that's in the middle. And that's where a lot of these things come about with people who have borderline personality disorders. You know, they'll have this irregularity within their moods or unstable moods because they can't gauge that in between. They don't know what to do with that. And what do we do when we don't know how to do or deal with something? We get scared, we get fearful. And the minute that fear enters us, it takes control of us. And if we've not learned how to deal through the situation, we will act childish. It's like you get reverted back to childhood when you should have learned how to deal with these type of situations. So I'm going to make more videos about it because there's just so much to this, which is another reason why I just wanted to do this right now, because I don't want to get caught up in how many other things I'm going to learn and then be like, oh my gosh, what do I mention? And I kind of want to do it as I'm progressing. So another thing I want to mention before I end this video, I see it's getting a little lengthy, but a therapy route that I am going to be taking is DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, I believe is what it stands for. And I'm really excited to do that. I've read it in the past just for therapy reasons for trauma. So I'm really excited about that. And I'll also be sharing my experiences through that for anybody who is interested in what it means and how it works. So I will guide you along as I go. And I appreciate you watching till the end. I really do. And like I said, I will be making more videos about this, but I just wanted to get this out there. I was so self-judgmental to myself about it, and so scared about what it would mean and if I was going to be judged and how it could be weaponized against me. But in reality, I was just doing it to myself. So it is important for me to make this video and just get that off of my chest and into the web. Why not? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate you watching. I'm sending you love.